Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we decided to focus on a subject which concerns us all. How can the world of business help in creating new livelihoods, help in alleviating poverty around the world? And we still have, although the world has grown a lot in the last several decades, even the emerging markets have shown a lot of growth along with, of course, the developed world. But we see this peculiar phenomenon where about 1 billion plus people are still very poor in this part of the world, in South as in Asia, in Africa, etc. So can businesses help in a very focused way to create livelihoods besides focusing on just making profits, which is of course their primary aim? So to discuss this, we have with us a special guest from Harvard University. He's at the South Asian Center of Harvard University, a fellow there, as well as he's a visiting scholar at the Harvard Business School, where he also deals with the corporate social responsibility aspects of creating livelihood. Welcome to our show, Dr. Shashank Shah.
Thank you.
So you are here as a project director.
Yes.
For a special project for creating livelihoods
yes.
in India.
Yes. Yes.
Now, what made Harvard University embark on this project?
Yeah. So this is a joint project. It's a collaborative project between the Tata Trust and the Harvard University South Asia Institute. The umbrella focus being livelihood creation in India. As you rightly mentioned, livelihood creation is a major challenge facing countries like India and others in the Indian subcontinent.
Even the West.
Of course.
The way economic growth is panning out.
Yes.
Inequalities are growing in the West also.
Yes, of course. And so the objective was to try and catalyze the process of livelihood creation. The government of India has also been giving a lot of focus and impetus to this field, and corporate organizations are increasingly becoming more and more focused on this aspect of their responsibility, that, as you said, profit is an important part in the economics of things. Land, labor, capital, enterprise should get their returns, and for enterprise it's profit. But how well that profit is utilized and how that profit can further catalyze the economy and its growth and fuel the drivers of growth, both social and commercial, is an important role that corporations can play. So this project primarily aimed at bringing into focus the multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary capacities that the Harvard South Asia Institute possesses, and using that to contribute to 3 sectors that we identified in this 18-month pilot project. One of them was rural livelihood creation in the Indian craft sector. The second one was science and technology based social entrepreneurship. And the third one was the educational, economic and social empowerment of women. Now each of these are kind of standalone, but they are interconnected in a way, if you see. And these areas were selected for 2 reasons. Firstly, because there is a need to contribute in this area. Harvard can bring into play its research rigor, its international perspective, and also catalyze the kind of capacity gaps that exist in these sectors in India. And the faculty chairs who brought in their expertise and their research, national and international, into focus, were interested to contribute to these areas. So that was the background to how we started.
So tell me, what's your basic analysis of the gaps that exist in India in terms of, say, livelihood creation? What is the problem? Because there is a view that manufacturing, you may have very good manufacturing growth,
right?
But on the back of technology, automation, this is the new buzzword.
Yes.
Automation in the West, as well as at some point automation will come to the developing countries also.
Yes.
It's actually going to create more unemployment.
Yes.
So how do you see creation of livelihoods in the context of this big automation that we see on the horizon?
Yes. So I would like to share some statistics. So if you see between 1999 and 2013, the number of people who got into the working population were about 300 million. But the people who could get employed into some in some tangible way, were about 140 million. Now, if you take this forward, the predictions are that by 2050, we would need to create employment for 280 million people in order to sustain this level of growth. But as you are rightly mentioning, automation and many other facets of the way corporations are growing, the role of IT and the other indirect factors which are affecting the corporate growth, there would always be this great threat that the livelihood creation may not pan out as well as we anticipate it to be.
Exactly.
And hence, I think there are two very important parameters which we need to focus on, which we have tried to through this project. One is on social entrepreneurship, and the second is on skill building and skill development. If you see, both of these are giving an important opportunity for individuals to take charge of their lives. They are not depending on corporations for their livelihoods. The corporations are not looked at as villains because they are not able to absorb these people, because it may be profitable to work with IT and robots and all of that.
Empower them in a decentralized sort of way.
Yes, and you can pass on the baton to them of their lives so that they can be socially and economically well off as compared to what they are now. And for that, social entrepreneurship and skill building are two very important tools, and that's what we focused on. Now, why do I say that? Skill development is important because every year about 30 million students are registered in academic institutions around India. But how many of them are given vocational training? How many of them are deployable into productive jobs after they finish their degrees? That's a question which is always haunting economists and social scientists. So skill building is a very important and critical component, especially in the rural areas where this is a big lacuna.
When you build skills, how do you go about it? Is it a demand-driven skill building exercise, or is it that you have certain templates and you build skills and then wait for them to sort of get absorbed in certain industries? How do you go about it?
So I think there are two ways of looking at it. One is, what is the inherent capacity that demography has? For example, if you take the craft sector, in our project, we identified the handicrafts and the handloom sector, and that there is huge proportion of population who belong to weaver families. But the profession of being a weaver or a handloom worker or a handcraft artisan is not having a mainstream occupation profession. So just for your information and of the viewers, the craft sector employs, as per official statistics, about 20 million people. As per in unofficial statistics, the number is as large as 200 million. It is the second.
Why is there a gap between official and
I don't know, because based on the research that we've done, primarily secondary research, we've not done any primary research because the canvas is really big, but the published reports by national international agencies that we studied identified that the 20 million people basically account for those who are full-time involved in this profession, whereas the others include those who are working during seasonal breaks from agriculture, during monsoon, during if they have one crop a year, so they work in this. So it's the second most employing profession after agriculture in rural India, but it has not got the status and the support that it deserves as the second most employing profession. So we took the example of the weavers, and we have a huge chunk of weavers who do not have that kind of support system, financial, academic, knowledge related, IT related, language related, design related, market access related. They don't have any of these, but they have a heritage, a culture, a tradition that they are parties to because of something which is being passed on generation after generation. So if these people are given the right kind of skills so that they can make their skill, their art, their inheritance into an occupation. This was one of our focus areas. And the way we went about doing this was supporting social entrepreneurs who've committed their time and their skills in building the skills and the capacities of these rural artisans. So in our project, So
the social entrepreneurs stay with this project, or they just do it for a while and then they move on to the regular corporate jobs? That's what I've seen happen.
Yeah, so the social entrepreneurs that we worked with, so we reached out to about 10 states and studied about 70 organizations on field, the kind of models they have, the kind of challenges they are facing, the kind of capacity gaps that they have. And from that we put together a curriculum. And the study that we did revealed to us that these are organizations and entrepreneurs who have left lucrative jobs from multinational companies and have listened to their calling to contribute to this field.
And they're staying there.
And they're staying there. They have established professional organizations which may not be very big, but which have the focus and the attempt to contribute to these in a very big way.
And you're helping, supporting them, is it?
So we have, we did a couple of capacity building workshops where we had Harvard faculty and in-region experts who came in, and we provided them. So they had identified 3 areas where they said there are capacity gaps. One of them was market access and marketing. One of them was finance and fundraising. And one of them was scaling and strategy. So how do they build on these gaps, and how we could help them given the expertise that the in-region experts and Harvard faculty possess in order to build these aspects into their daily functioning so that they can increase in scale and scope of work. If you calculate the figure, indirectly through the capacity building workshop, we had directly 50 organization leaders, and they in turn were working with 180,000 artisans. So the kind of skills that we attempted to build in these crafts entrepreneurs would in turn percolate to the 180,000 artisans and help them build their scale and scope of work, and in turn catalyze their social and economic
So you're
lives.
saying it's a scalable project?
It's a scalable project. It's a project, it's an opportunity for well-meaning academic institutions, corporates, and subject experts to contribute to. One of the biggest gaps we saw was in skills and capacity building, even in the entrepreneurs.
Tell me, I want to ask you something here. You spoke about weavers,
Yes.
and I take your point that there may be just 20 million regular
Yes.
self-employed weavers,
Yes.
but there may probably many more who work part-time.
Yes.
During
Not weavers, all forms of crafts, metal, wood, paper, textile, all of that.
all forms of
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, okay, you're giving me a consolidated figure.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, tell me, how can I read an interesting article today written by in the Times of India by the former Minister of State for Finance, Jayant Sinha.
Yes.
Now he along with another co-author, they argue that India is going digital.
Right.
And the manufacturing space will cease to provide the kind of jobs that we traditionally believed that they would.
Yes.
So, use of technology for mass manufacturing is, according to their argument, is not India's future. India's future is use of technology to drive mass services.
Yes.
Now, one example that the minister gives, he's now a civil aviation minister.
Yes, yes, of course.
He says precisely for our artisans, our weavers, our craftsmen, is it possible for them to use technology and the digital platform
Yes.
to mass market their products? You know, they're the long tail. So
Yes.
if they sitting here, can they sort of reach out to some millions of global consumers? Is that possible?
Yes, of course. So,
But can Harvard sort of look at some project like that?
yes, so one of the things that we discovered during the course of this project and the research that we did and the interactions with the crafts entrepreneurs was the role technology can play in giving them 2 things. One is insights into the world of design, the international demands with respect to design, the international trends with respect to design, and how weavers
And connecting them with the international market.
Connecting them with the international market from the design and the input side. That's the one side of it. Yeah. And how smartphones can be very useful to them to connect with experts, to connect with ideas, to connect with the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, so that they get the best ideas, the images and all sitting in the small rural hamlet in different parts of India. Yeah. The other part, the other role the IT can play is in order to provide a platform at the commercial end, where their products can be used through e-commerce websites, through social media platforms, in order to reach out a very wide audience.
In fact, the minister mentions a similar platform created by Alibaba.com,
okay,
which is actually giving the small self-employed entrepreneur in India
yes,
a kind of access to the global market through their platform.
Yes.
You think?
I definitely think that's a step in the right direction. We had interactions with an organization called itokri.com, we had Jaipur.com. We had a lot of them who are working on these areas. There is another organization which is trying to provide, which is the Tata Chemicals Limited supported organization called Okhai, which is helping the women, rural artisans in the Mithapur area of Gujarat, while their men work on salt pans and women work part-time in the day, how their crafts can be sustained, and they are providing a platform for their products to be available in the mainstream market through IT. So I think IT can provide a huge platform. We had a webinar as part of this project by Facebook, where they showed without any investment, without any expense, how Facebook has provided platforms for social entrepreneurs to access the larger world for their products, for their ideas, and scale up their commercial sales many notches higher. So I think in both ways IT can play a role. In handicrafts,
at the input level and the marketing level.
At the input level, through designs, through ideas, through exposure to the larger world, and at the marketing level to reach their products out to the national and international markets, because the levels of awareness is less. Another aspect is the story that goes with the craft, because we see a product, we don't know the story behind the product. In the Western world, the story sells as well as the product. So if the story is woven in with the product would be appreciated much better. Otherwise, it is always seen by the price that it demands, but not the effort that the artisans put behind making the product ready.
So tell me how, this is something which puzzles me. Now, you are part of the Harvard University South Asia Center.
Yes.
Now, you're also associated with the Harvard Business School, the CSR project that that you study there, or you explore there. Now, why have important universities in the West created South Asia centers in the recent decade? All this has happened. There is a South Asia center in Colombia. There is a South Asia center in other universities.
Yes.
What is it about South Asia that I'll come back to our
our conversation
main
CSR
subject, but,
yes, of course.
Yeah, but I want to understand why are foreign universities so focused on South Asia now?
I think the South Asia, or as many times we refer to in India as Indian subcontinent, and in the West they say South Asia, has almost 1/3 of the world population in these 7 countries. And the kind of geographic, demographic, sociographic and economic issues that this part of the world are facing, and the kind of market access and knowledge expertise that this part of the world is providing and can provide, is really interesting, inspiring and intriguing to the Western world. So to study how and what happens here, and how they can contribute to the growth story of this part of the world, how they can take in lessons from what's happening in this part of the world, is something which is very interesting, and which is the focus of most institutions, including the South Asia Institute. For example, I can say at the Harvard South Asia Institute, we did a project on the Kumbh Mela.
Okay.
And we had all the multi-faculty expertise to study the Kumbh Mela from a management perspective, from governance perspective.
You did one on railways also, Indian Railways, right? There were some Harvard students who did a study.
Yeah, but that was not at the South Asia Institute. Harvard has 13 schools, so it would be one of them. But the Kumbh project was by the South Asia Institute. They studied it from the public health perspective, governance perspective, religion and spirituality perspective, management perspective, public policy perspective, and then brought together a compilation of their research and findings, and then published it as a book which was released by the government of Uttar Pradesh. And that would act as valuable insights for planning the next Kumbh. So it would be a win-win, as I call, and that's the name of my book, latest book, Win-Win Corporations. A win-win situation where the Indian agencies and the institutions can benefit from Western insights, and the Western universities and faculty can learn from their research areas of interest as to what is it that these countries and these individuals
So
are
you're saying that the South Asia Center of Harvard University has long-term commitment to livelihood creation in India?
They have long-term commitment to livelihood creation in India. They have long-term commitment.
Or is it linked to just the Tata group project?
No, of course, the livelihood creation in India, social entrepreneurship, these are interconnected areas which the Harvard South Asia Institute, our faculty director, Professor Tarun Khanna, and many other faculty who are associated with this project, Professor Mukti Khaire, Professor Jackie Baba, Professor Martha Chen, all of these have been committed to research in India over many decades. So it is a continuous effort from their end to look at very, very tangible ways in which they could contribute to India.
You know, Shashank, one of the criticisms of both CSR as well as some of these pilot projects
is
that they've been on for many years, but they somehow they don't scale up. They don't create a wide enough, for use of a better word, impact. So, if you think that there's a bottom of the pyramid business model to be explored, or massive business opportunities to be explored in India,
Right.
To use the late C.K. Prahlad's term.
Yes.
He also used to imagine that at some point India would have a large number of social entrepreneurs,
Yes.
who would also whose businesses would become viable simply by virtue of tapping the bottom of the pyramid demand.
Yes.
Why is that not happening in India?
So I think there are two
Because
things.
everybody is doing pilots now.
Yes.
When are these pilots going to link up and connect?
See, I look at it two ways. The very fact, so I look at it from an economic perspective in the long term. For 700 years, if you see historically, we have been in some form of a colonial rule. In 47, we became independent. And in the last 70 years, we've now risen to a level in which in the last 25 years alone, after the economic liberalization, we've risen to a level where we are the third largest country in GDP purchasing power parity level. So the growth story of India has been enormously discussed, studied and analyzed as to what makes it as successful a growth story as it has been.
Potentially.
Potentially.
We are still a low income country.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, we are not even middle income. Yeah.
But I'll give you the reason for that, because in my study that I've done from a CSR perspective, if you compare us with number one, who is US, we are 1/3 in size and 4 times the population. So we have 12x the complexities, and we have, so America has been a free enterprise system and a democracy for 300 years. We've been so only 70 years. So the kind of complex maze in which India is, and if you compare us with China, it's a very different system of governance.
America has not been a democracy for 300 years.
It's been a free enterprise system for 200 plus years,
Democracy,
and evolving
quite
democracy, you can say. It was not under any colonial rule as such, but they've been expanding from the New England region and then the Midwest and then California. So over the last 250, 300 years, they've consolidated themselves, but much longer than India in terms of, and there was no colonial rule, there was no baggage that they were carrying. So I'm just trying to compare that the situation is very different. But I'm also very hopeful about the India story, because in the last 25 years, we've risen very successfully. Now, I look at I look at the CSR legislation from the point of view of an opportunity for corporations to contribute not just the funding, because if you see even 15,000 crores annually that they are saying would come from the CSR into the societal,
from the 2% of
from the
profits.
2% of profits after tax, it is over 12 to 15 different causes. So it's going to be 1,000 crore a cause, and that's not going to move the needle. But what's going to move the needle is the mind space that the top corporate bigwigs are going to give to CSR, because CSR discussions have now entered the boardroom with this legislation, and the ideas and the long-term planning that is going into this is going to make a difference. Many of the big companies, many of the public sector enterprises, many of the big Indian companies, Indian multinationals have annual budgets of 200 crores, 500 crores. 10 years down the line, they would have spent consolidated 5,000 crore rupees on CSR. So it is forcing them to think long term. The other aspect is any social development and any social change takes time, because, for example, corporations are focusing on individual activities in isolation. You look at livelihood creation. But livelihood creation alone is not enough, because the same family faces issues of health, faces issues of education. So they have those parallel problems. So an integrated approach needs to be put into place, which we saw in many organizations, even in this project, where education, health are also looked at, so the social aspect is taken care of. And when that assurance comes into these rural families that this is something which they are good at, their focus on economics and their commercial self-sufficiency gets into their mainstream priorities. So it's this integrated approach which will help CSR succeed in the long run. So it's input of the corporate ideas, part input of the funding, that catalyzing change, the change leading to some kind of outputs, that outputs over a period of time leading to outcomes, and the outcomes in turn leading to impact. I think this is the entire spectrum. We are at the input stage now because all corporations are now thinking in a very, very focused fashion. And I'm optimistic because it's just 2 to 3 years since the CSR legislation has come into play. And a lot of this discussion is happening.
So you're saying that in some ways the CSR legislation will also link up with your livelihood creation project?
A lot of them are thinking from the livelihood perspective because it's a win-win there. If you're going to contribute to livelihoods in terms of creating great, for example, I'll take Larsen & Toubro. They have this construction and skills training institute. Their focus is to look at unemployed youth or those who have passed 6th grade, 8th grade in order to give them training in carpentry, in plumbing work, in electrification.
So they are putting the CSR money in those things.
They are focusing on that as one of their projects, and those people don't come back to L&T. They go to the industry. The industry benefits because you are training them in all of these skills, and they in turn can join L&T, can join any other company. So the companies in turn are getting more deployable people. Wipro did that with their Mission 10X project, where they tried to contribute to the syllabus of engineering colleges to bring in a practical focus to computer engineering, computer science, and allied areas. So again, those students not only get theory, but get a lot of practical insights. So many companies are looking at innovatively in what I have studied, and I guess in the long term, this is going to benefit them. And livelihood creation, as we just discussed, that companies creating jobs is not going to be the only way to fulfill the livelihood
because,
gap.
You know, half of India's employed population today, nearly half, is actually self-employed.
Yes.
This pattern has not been seen in any other developing economy.
Yes.
So
yes, and we are inherently entrepreneurial. The trading trait in India has been seen over centuries, whether it's Gujarat, Rajasthan, or in Tamil Nadu, and almost all parts of the country, there have been very strong trading and entrepreneurial traditions. So I guess it's very natural to India, and the Skill India, the Startup India, and all the focus that the government has given. I think this is a positive ecosystem which is being created. The role of the government, the role of the corporations is on creating a positive ecosystem. I think that's what I see as their role. A lot of initiative then has to be taken by the individuals who are at the receiving end, because that desire, that aspiration to succeed exists. This ecosystem, the funds pouring in, the ideas pouring in, and their inherent aspirations would be a wonderful formula to propel India and its population to the next inflection point of growth.
let's hope some of these big ideas come together and they work in the next 10, 20 years. Thank you very much for talking to us, Dr. Shashank Shah.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for having me here.
That's all in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.